Thank you, Nalani. Okay, up next, I'd like to welcome to the stage one of the co-directors of the Hawaiʻi Wildfire Management Organization. And I feel like only saying her name isn't full service, so the other co-director is Nani Barreto, who we'll be bringing to the stage today, Elizabeth Pickett. I'm taking the flag with me.
Hey, good morning. Welcome back. I hope everyone enjoyed yesterday and last night's kickoff and dinner, and that you were able to have some good conversations. This gathering is about so much more than just presentations, although today is our formal day, as you can see. Throughout the entire experience, we want lots of socializing and connecting. And also, this work requires the human part of us to connect, and it also has a lot of technical details, and we're constantly spanning all of that all at once. And so this experience kind of has time for socializing and also time to get to business, and today is kind of the business day. But it's really about shared learning and moving forward together. So thank you so much for joining us. This work doesn't happen alone, and so many folks who've gone yesterday and today in their presentations have already spoken to this and honored this, but we had a lot of folks come together to plan, a very small planning team, but then the carrying out of this summit took a lot of different people. We had sponsors who donated money toward it, we had sponsors who donated toward the food and drinks and your swag bags and things like that. And so we just wanted to acknowledge that a lot of folks came together to create the entire experience. And thank you to you who are attending, and also the folks who keep up all of these community centers so that things like this can happen. It's kind of the message of the summit anyway, that it takes all of us and we're all in this together, and the summit is no exception. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, I stuck this slide in at the last minute, realizing that maybe we should talk about that for a minute. Our organization is Hawaiʻi Wildfire Management Organization. We are a nonprofit. We were founded in the year 2000 by a whole diverse set of folks who came together because they saw that wildfires were increasing in frequency and in size and threatening both natural resources and communities. So that early group that came together was already very diverse, and they looked around for who was doing this cross-boundary work across the system, because they could see already it was a systems problem. It would take a systems solution, meaning lots of partners. And there wasn't anyone working on it in that way, so they founded our organization to fill in the gaps, to be proactive, always to maintain the coordination and collaboration that's necessary to do this kind of work well. And since that time, we've become a hub for wildfire-related information, education, training. We have lots of risk reduction and mitigation projects, and it's been a long couple of decades, and the journey has been sort of interesting. But we started off on West Hawaiʻi Island. Then it was this big deal to go island-wide, and then we were asked to go to Maui, and then Chief Westerman asked us to start working here in, I think, 2010. And then we've gone, since going statewide, we also have gone Pacific-wide, because this is an emerging issue across our whole region. And there's a lot of work to be done, and we're so grateful and proud to be a part of this big movement and effort. So, the purpose of the summit. We've said it so many times, yesterday and already today, that we can't solve this alone. There's no one fire chief, one agency, one utility company, one community, one anything that can actually do all the things that need to get done. And no one authority has jurisdiction and complete say over every one of the private and public interests, every single agency, everything. Nobody has that. And so this work requires us to stay connected, to connect across our state, to connect and bridge across sectors. And that is really the purpose of these summits, is so that we can gather and have a chance to put it all in one place once a year at least, and just see what's happening across the system to stay connected, and ideally to think together about where we go next and how best to do so. And it's based on the idea and the concept that our trust in our relationships is our infrastructure, and it is the method by which we can get done what we need to do. This work is not that kind of work where it's just fun and it's just for whatever, and who cares if there's duplication or competition, and everyone's doing their own thing. Lives are on the line. Our homes are on the line. Our irreplaceable natural resources are on the line. And we can't waste money, and we can't waste time, and we can't do that thing that happens in other businesses or sectors. Like, this is not that kind of issue. And our early founders saw that and created this opportunity, or created our organization and lots of other coordinating groups, and then this summit. And whenever we gather, it's an opportunity to remind ourselves of that and to make connections where we can. We have some ground rules. They're good ones. Everyone is both a teacher and a learner. And this work is constantly evolving. The technical portions, the science is constantly helping us better understand. So we need to be constantly learning. We need to reach out and learn from each other so we don't reinvent the wheel. But the other part is we're all learning as we go, and we have lots to share. So we just invite you to think about things like that, both at the summit and in the greater work that we all do. And to invite you to be curious and open-minded, to take care of yourself and the people around you. Today is really about Hawaii. Yesterday we connected to the broader work that's going on across the continent and what's happening to all of us and in different parts of the system. And today is about talking about what's happened since the last summit. It doesn't highlight every last thing that is happening, which is kind of, I talked about it last night, but it's kind of awesome. There's so much happening. Every agency I can think about now kind of understands that there's a role. Lots of folks are stepping it up. A lot of people who knew there was work to do but didn't have funding are now getting some funding to do that. And other folks who were not at the table before are at the table. And the private sector is getting engaged, utilities, insurance. We have 60 Firewise communities that are in the process, somewhere in the process of being Firewise. I mean, there's a lot of work going on, so there's no way we could do that in one day, but we did try to highlight some good stuff across the system just to keep everyone kind of in the loop of the general nature of the cool stuff that's happening. So we can take a look at how the day is organized. It's in your program. But essentially, we have organized all of this according to the National Cohesive Wildland Fire Management Strategy. We call it the Cohesive Strategy for short. And the reason that we do this is because this is a very complicated issue. And it can get very overwhelming when you start to say, everyone has a role, everyone needs to do their part. And it covers everything from policies and funding and laws and ordinances down to the technical details of the engineering side of things and the community work and the landscape work, and it starts to feel like so much. And I don't know, about 12 years ago, Wildland Fire Leadership Council and others at the national level they were really trying to give us a shared language, a shared framework, a shared way to think about this whole system, because no part of the system alone can do all the things we need to do. So we have to break it apart, and then we also have to put it back together again. And so this is a helpful framework to use. And so we use the framework in the community wildfire protection plans. National funding opportunities ask you what part of the cohesive strategy categories you're working within and what goals it addresses. So it's a really helpful construct, and so a lot of stuff in Hawaii is organized like this. That said, there's a lot of overlap, and this is the official cohesive strategy graphic. And while it focuses on communities adapting to the risks that they face and all the people parts of the system and the policies and the home hardening and all that sort of stuff, built environment, there's also the work towards resilient landscapes, and that's resilient toward many types of threats. And of course, simultaneously, we need to make sure that we have the best, most safe and effective emergency response we could have. So the day is organized in a way where at the start of each session, the moderator is going to go into detail about what the goals are of those cohesive strategy tenets. But I will say the overlap is a really complicated and important place to be working within. And we've done a good job in Hawaii because it was actually even hard to figure out which of our presenters fell into which categories because it's so integrated that they're kind of doing both. So you'll hear about forestry operations and landscape management in the communities portion because they're also doing community risk reduction and supporting land management work in areas where the communities are most threatened, and so there's this natural integration. And then similarly in the resilient landscape section, there are folks that are having to work a lot in the people and human space and in policy world and navigating a lot of human things in order to do the vegetation management work. So it's actually really hard in Hawaii to tease it apart and make it just singular. And that's a good thing, but it makes it hard to exactly show where it falls in the framework. But overall, in general, if we use this framework, it really helps us to track what's going on and what needs to be done. So at the last minute, I stuck in these slides because I realized maybe not everybody is really already having the same foundation of information about fire in Hawaii. And I want to credit Dr. Clay Charlick, who's here, and Melissa Camara, who we've been using these slides for like 10 years. But they're still true, and it's just a really nice way to think about things, which is that we have increasing fire risk in Hawaii. We know that this is our reality, and we know why. And we have human-caused ignitions driving the majority of our fires. Excuse me. 99% of fires are started by humans. Less than 1% is a combination of lightning and lava. This is not like the American West that has lots of lightning starts. It's us doing this. And some of it is, a good majority of it is accidental, which is very hopeful because that is preventable if we're all living like we know we have fire risk, in the way we use our equipment, in the way we have cooking fires and campfires and all that sort of stuff. So, but then once we have the ignition, we have very combustible landscapes and built environments. And those are the parts we really need to work on. We also know that when you zoom out, that what you see when it comes to what's going on with fire in any place is a combination of what's going on with people, climate, and fuels. And in Hawaii, we have the perfect recipe. Everything is pointing toward increased fire occurrence and risk. We have human-caused emissions. We have a climate, pattern that has heavy rainfall, green up events, and then all of a sudden all that vegetation that just grew dries out and becomes standing fuel. And then we have very combustible homes, cities, towns that just weren't built with wildfire resistance or safety in mind. And so this is what we're working with, and this is why we're seeing wildfires and urban conflagrations, and it's here to stay. So we have a lot of work to do in each of the categories I went over. I put this in here because this is a graphic that our team made a long time ago as we were starting to think through, gosh, if this is a whole system, who all impacts this, and who do we need to work with, and who do we need to support and draw and invite to the table? And we went through and we thought through of like all the sectors who contribute to what we see, and I thought of some that we still need to add. But this was our early work to just figure out how we could support this and start working across all kinds of people to get to where we need to. And this it's probably hard to read. It's okay if you don't read it, but essentially we were thinking, well, who creates the built environment in the first place? Planners, architects, engineers. Who else is part of the safety system that we have? Oh, utilities, insurance. Who influences what we think about, what we know about, what we learn, what we care about? Who creates the policies, funding decisions? Who's actually managing the land, the yards, the landscapes? We thought through as many as we could, and we've over the years been trying to engage folks across that whole system. And in the early days, it was like, everyone has a role. We all need to do our part. And now we're seeing for the first time in Hawaii's history, everyone kind of knows that, and they're all stepping into it. And now it's like, wait, we do all have roles, but we have to work together. So I think our next level is to figure out what that looks like and how to do that best we can. And that said, these are the areas we focus on. Fire is the one thing we actually can aim to reduce and minimize and prevent. We won't ever prevent everything, but we can minimize our ignitions, and we do that through lots of methods, education, prosecution, whatever, but there's things we can do. We need to manage our land and water and our fuels. We need to make our homes and towns safe and hardened and ignition resistant. And knowing that we're not going to stop or prevent all fires, we need to make sure everyone's ready for evacuation and that our emergency response needs are covered and addressed, and we have optimal fire and emergency response. But it's not easy moving into that new chapter of figuring out what coordination and communication and collaboration looks like. But what we know is that we have really important things on the line, and we know that silos don't work. I had a funny example about it that I wanted to bring up, because this whole event, we were talking and planning and Zooming, and then we missed one detail, which was fire department got the lanyards, we made the name tags, and we didn't measure the clip fitting in the hole, and so we had to teach everyone how to make do. It was like the perfect example, because it made me think about how, we missed a detail and it was a little funky, and we figured out how to make it work, but it's a lot easier if you talk ahead of time and figure that out. And in 2018, some of our team was part of this. We actually met with as many large landowners as we could, and we mapped the fuel break and fuels reduction work that they were working on to see where we needed to go next, what kind of maintenance it needed, what additional projects needed to be done. And we had these huge meetings where we were having the maps and we were prioritizing where to go next. And I can't tell you the number of times we found somebody making a fuel break that ended in one place, and the other jurisdiction had one going somewhere else, and we're like, oh, we can match them up, and then we have better access and better continuity, and then everyone's in on it. And so there's a lot of really functional reasons, not just like, this isn't just soft work where we want to be all friends, except it's awesome to be friends. But there are very real reasons why we need to be communicating and coordinating. So this is a new slide. And I thought about this a lot, which is just that I think we have to lean into the complexity. Because they're really siloed, unilateral, run ahead, do it on my own kind of solutions get us into weird places. And it is complex. We have the framework of the cohesive strategy that we can use. But we have some other ways we can think about it that will help us also make sure we have these integrated solutions that make sense. So we do need to think from Mauka to Makai. Our watershed, native watershed forests, and our managed or unmanaged grasslands, our built environment, they are actually all a part of the spectrum. There are fuels from summit to sea. They're just different types of fuels. And so often we divide into wildland and built environment. Or we segment it so our brains can make sense of it, but our solutions need to have it make sense where we're the methods for treating the fuels are different, but we have some methods we use to protect forests, some to manage lands, some to manage fuels and mitigate risk in the built environment. So the methods are different, but we need to understand that it's continuous. And we need to think that way. I mean, when we make fuel breaks or fire breaks up high, we have to think about erosion that's going to go down and impact the ocean. There's just all of this connectivity. The birds don't recognize our weird boundaries. Water doesn't, wind doesn't, fire doesn't. So we have to be thinking across that entire landscape. The next is we have to think across systems. I already gave some examples of that, but there are lots of things we can do in an integrated fashion. Like fuel breaks can also serve as firefighting access. They can serve as harvest roads. It can serve as additional community egress. Bike paths, we need to be thinking about achieving multiple benefits at once, where we serve our water needs, our food needs, our housing needs, our recreation needs, our sustenance. All of that we can have integrated solutions where we achieve a lot in one fell swoop if we're thinking across all of those different systems and all of our community goals and needs we're trying to serve. And then finally, we have to think across time. We're all talking about looking past the horizon and being, using our imagination. And that's really, really important. We use our best available information to think through what we want to leave for our children and generations down the line. And we have to get started now. We also have to do stuff immediately for immediate risk reduction. Risk is all out there right now. We have work to do. And sometimes you have to do that immediate work while you're also thinking of the long term, what can you do now that's going to lead to more sustained action. So that might look like mowing and weed whacking today, but it might look like figuring out how to get the infrastructure to support agriculture and grazing and restoration for the longer term to completely convert the fuels so that it's sustained. We're not just spending money running out and weed whacking over and over and over again. So we have to be thinking on these different timescales. And also, now that there's so many folks interested and motivated and concerned and ready to take action, there has been decades of work on this, not just by our organization, but by folks at the university, Forest Service. Communities have been at this a very long time as well. Like, we have all been learning and learning and learning. And some have been publishing, and lots of information is already available. So we want to encourage folks to look at what's come before and not reinvent the wheel. We're also building on a long legacy of summits, which is very cool, and now you're a part of that lineage. So the way this all started was that in, 1998, Chief Mueller reminded me there was a big fire on Hawaiʻi Island, and it got a lot of people talking and convening. And then from then, started some coordinating groups. They launched or founded Hawaiʻi Wildfire Management, our state forestry, Fire League, Wing Ching, started coordinating groups on every island. And so people were already starting to gather and think about this and work on it. And then in 2012, we decided, let's get all of those people together. I could see some people in the room who actually joined us. And we started having these all-partner meetings. And then we outgrew the room. We outgrew, we couldn't even do all the updates in one day anymore. And they were so brief around the giant table. Thank you to Chief Mueller for hosting many of those at PTA. We were like, it's time. I think we finally have this critical mass and there's enough work going on. We thought that was a lot at the time, and now it's like exponentially more. But that felt like a really important big deal thing. And so we ended up having our first Hawaiʻi Wildfire Summit. And in those days it was fun. We did art, we had art tables and lots of trainings and field trips, and our closing ceremony was a spoken word poetry slam. We didn't give prizes, it wasn't a competition, but in my book, Mike Walker's was pretty amazing. That's why I put his picture there. And we didn't have money, we didn't have political will, we didn't have critical mass, we didn't even have attention, funding, policy support, top-down knowledge or care about wildfire issue, but we had each other. And we knew it, and every dollar had to be spent well and in a coordinated way that was really going to affect change. We were all skeleton staffed. It was just a totally different scene, but we built something kind of amazing in terms of the summit and also in terms of the community, but this is not a typical conference. Even though it looks like it and we're having presentations all in a row, this is about each other and building that social infrastructure, and one that is informed by science and best practice and lessons learned. It's intentional community building. It's intentionally meant to inspire cohesive, collective action towards something that matters a lot. I also want to honor the folks who got us here. Everyone keeps giving me credit, but I'm just trying to carry out the vision of these guys. And they were mentors to many of us in the room. Miles Nakahara and Wing Ching spent their life and their careers in state forestry, DOFA, and they watched our landscapes changing. And they saw us lose native watershed forests. They saw fuels conversion. They saw fires happening. Miles was incident commander on so many fires here and then also on the mainland. And then they founded all of this work that needed to, all of the collective efforts, the culture of our collaboration in Hawaii was built from them. And they both passed away during COVID, and they didn't get a public memorial, but I want to say that I think even if you've never met them and you had no idea, they have touched your work if you're working on wildfire. Because so much of what we have and what has been built and what's usable, they started. So I wanted to honor them. And if you take this QR code, I hope I see some phones out. We wrote a tribute and a memorial to them that really outlined a lot of the work that they did. So I encourage you to snap that. I'll give you a minute to do that. So I see some phones up. Please read it. I also wanted to take a moment to honor Chief Todd, who, it's so fresh, I'll keep it very simple. He made us resurrect the summit. So we were maxed out, and I'm like, I don't know if we can do that right now, but we did it last year. And so we're going to do it every year if we can, and it's thanks to him really recognizing that these convenings are really important. I also want to remind us that we're doing this because a lot of folks have lost their lives, and we didn't act fast enough, and we didn't pull the whole system together, and we're living with decades in the making of stuff that we now need to fix. And we can make sure that their lives are not lost for nothing, but rather it turns us into a stronger Hawaii. So with that, I just want to take a minute so we can think about our mentors, think about the shoulders upon which we stand, think about the folks who motivate us and into the future and into a better future. So with that, we've recognized our past, we've recognized our giants that have got us to where we are, to the spirit that they created, to the collaboration by necessity, and also because it's awesome to work in that kind of space where we're all in this together, and we care about each other, we care about our lands and waters. And I hope you enjoy the rest of today, and you feel like you have a sense of what's going on around the state. Thank you so much for being here on behalf of our organization, on all of the hosts that put this together. That's all. Thank you. I'd like to welcome my partner in crime here.